Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us early today. We have a very busy day, so we wanted to kick off the week right this morning after a great trip last week. It's good to see all of you back in Washington. This afternoon in the Rose Garden, President Trump, alongside First Lady Melania Trump, will sign the Take It Down Act into law. First Lady Melania Trump was instrumental in getting this important legislation passed. The Take It Down Act will protect victims of digital exploitation, hold internet platforms accountable by requiring them to remove such imagery from their platforms, and provide justice for victims by allowing prosecutors to go after those who publish non-consensual explicit images online. The First Lady met with members in the House and the Senate, survivors and their families, and advocates throughout the process to get this bill across the finish line. We are grateful for the First Lady's hard work and dedication to this issue. And moving forward, she will continue to champion the well-being of our nation's children through her Be Best agenda. I know the President looks forward to signing that bill into law later this afternoon, and we will see you all there. In other news, the One Big Beautiful Bill passed the House Budget Committee last night, bringing it one step closer to final passage. The One Big Beautiful Bill is perfectly named because it represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver on the Make America Great Again agenda responsible for President Trump's landslide victory on November 5th. The America First policies in this bill are the reason why Republicans currently have the majority in Congress right now. Passing this bill is what voters sent Republicans to Washington to accomplish. And that's why it's essential that every Republican in the House and the Senate unites behind President Trump and passes this popular and essential legislative package. This bill will be the single most pro-small business, pro-family, and pro-American worker legislation ever. This bill will give Americans the largest tax cuts in our nation's history. When Republicans pass the bill, Americans will be keeping more of their hard-earned money and taking home much bigger paychecks. The One Big Beautiful Bill will deliver some of President Trump's central campaign promises. No tax on tips for our hardworking waiters, waitresses, and service workers. No tax on overtime for our law enforcement officers, our firefighters, and all those Americans who are putting in extra hours to make ends meet. And a large tax deduction on interest payments for Americans who purchase American-made cars. Despite desperate Democrat lies, the biggest beneficiary of this tax cut will be working-class Americans and their families.
What's up, Right View Nation? Welcome back to the channel where we tell it like it is, without the liberal media spin. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into something that should make every patriotic American proud: President Trump's fearless approach to ending the disasters Biden left behind. Folks, what we're witnessing right now is the stark difference between real leadership and the weak, pathetic foreign policy we suffered through for 4 years. While Biden was too scared to even pick up the phone and talk to Putin, think about that for a second. President Trump is already on the line, getting things done. This is exactly why we voted for Donald Trump. Not for flowery speeches or political correctness, but for someone who has the backbone to make the tough calls that weak politicians won't make. And let me tell you something. The establishment hates this approach because it exposes how utterly useless they've been. You heard Caroline Leavitt say it perfectly. Biden didn't talk to Putin for the entire span of this war. That's not diplomacy, that's cowardice. You've got two nuclear powers in a proxy conflict, and the so-called experienced Biden administration just ignored it? Meanwhile, President Trump gets back in office and immediately starts working the phones. That's leadership. And don't even get me started on how the liberal media is spinning this. They're probably having meltdowns right now because Trump is actually trying to solve problems instead of just throwing money at them. For years, we've been funding endless wars while our own veterans sleep on the streets and our border remains wide open. President Trump promised America first, and that's exactly what we're seeing. He's not interested in being the world's ATM anymore. He wants these conflicts ended, not prolonged, not managed, but finished. Because every day these wars continue, that's American taxpayer money going overseas instead of fixing our own problems. Now let's talk about this One Big Beautiful
Americans
Bill.
earning between $30,000 and $80,000 per year will pay about 15% less in taxes after this legislation is passed. And according to a brand new paper from the White House Council of Economic Advisors, the average family with 2 children's take-home pay will be up to $13,000 higher because of the increase in wages and reductions in tax obligations. The CEA study also said that the average overtime worker receives a tax cut of roughly $2,000. Again, this is great news for our nurses, our police officers, and all those who work overtime to make ends meet across our country. Put simply, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill will be a boon for working class America. This One Big Beautiful Bill is also pro-family. It will increase the child tax credit to $2,500 per child, establish optional savings account for newborn babies with a $1,000 credit added, and strengthen paid family leave. This bill also delivers historic tax relief to America's seniors by allowing middle and low-income Social Security recipients to deduct an additional $4,000 in payments from their taxable income. If Democrats get their way and the Trump tax cuts are not extended, Americans will face the largest tax hike in history to the tune of $4 trillion. Republicans must not side with Democrats in helping them raise taxes. The One Big Beautiful Bill also provides critical protections of Medicaid, which will strengthen and preserve the program for decades to come through common sense efforts to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. Medicaid will no longer be used to pay for barbaric gender mutilation procedures on minor children. And the 1.4 million illegal aliens who are currently improperly receiving Medicaid benefits will be kicked off the program to preserve it for hard-working American citizens who need it. President Trump and Republicans are protecting Medicaid benefits for pregnant women, children, disabled individuals, low-income seniors and families, and the most vulnerable Americans in our society. And that's what Democrats are so angry about. Basic Medicaid protections that will stop the funding of transgender insanity and illegal aliens from ripping off American taxpayers. As you all know, over his first 4 months in office, President Trump ended the previous administration's open border crisis and secured our homeland in record time, all using executive authority. Now Congress needs to act. The One Big Beautiful Bill is the most significant investment in our nation's border patrol and law enforcement agents in our nation's history. The bill ensures that President Trump's popular and successful border security measures are made permanent. Republicans have the backs of Border Patrol and ICE agents who were put through hell over the past 4 years and have quickly worked to secure our southern border. And that's why this bill gives them more resources to do their jobs, including a $10,000 much-needed bonus to ICE agents and Border Patrol agents over the next 4 years. To provide those brave agents with desperately needed reinforcements on the ground, the bill allows for the hiring of thousands of new ICE personnel, customs officers, and Border Patrol agents. These significant hirings will empower President Trump to continue delivering on his promise to carry out the largest mass deportation in the history of our country. Again, that is a promise that Republicans made to American voters. It's a promise they were elected on, and it's a promise Republicans on Capitol Hill need to keep: secure our border. To supplement those efforts, the bill's funds will fund the completion of President Trump's signature border wall. As a result, 701 miles of primary wall, 900 miles of river barriers, 629 miles of secondary barriers, and 141 miles of vehicle and pedestrian barriers will be constructed when this bill passes, along with cutting-edge technology to secure our homeland from dangerous illegal alien invaders. This bill also advances our national security and defense interests by ensuring the United States military has the necessary resources to remain the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world. The bill will provide resources for the construction of President Trump's Golden Dome to safeguard Americans from potential attacks, give the Coast Guard resources to build more modernized ships, and the Air Force resources to acquire better planes. If all of those incredible things were not enough, the Big Beautiful Bill also finally modernizes air traffic control in America, a bipartisan issue. The bill will allow President Trump to deliver on his promise to overhaul and update our air traffic control systems to keep Americans flying as safe and efficiently as possible. The previous administration failed to act and do this themselves, despite repeated warnings from the GAO, which has resulted in unacceptable delays at major airports like Newark that the Trump administration is working hard to address. When the One Big Beautiful Bill passes, we will replace the current antiquated system, the FAA will enhance safety in our skies, reduce delays, and power the future of air travel in the United States. That's just some of what this historic legislation will accomplish. It is absolutely essential that Republicans unite behind the One Big Beautiful Bill and deliver on President Trump's agenda. There is no time to waste. Americans gave Republicans a once-in-a-generation opportunity to course-correct our country over many wrongs over the past 4 years. And Americans are counting on Republicans to work as hard as President Trump is in this White House every day on Capitol Hill. Send this legislation to his desk as soon as possible for his signature. Here in our new media seat today, we have Liam Cosgrove, the White House correspondent for Zero Hedge. With that, Liam, please kick us off.
Thank you, Caroline. So my first question is on foreign policy.
Sure.
The president has made several moves towards peace in multiple fronts. India, Pakistan with the Houthis, talking with Iran and talking with Putin. Biden didn't even talk to Putin for the entire span of the war, which is crazy considering two nuclear powers were engaged in a proxy war. So I do admire these moves by the current president, I'll be honest. However, as of today, we are still funding both Israel's and Ukraine's wars. So can Americans expect to finally be done financing foreign wars at some point? Do you consider that one of the president's goals?
Well, I think I can summarize the president's foreign policy agenda with 2 words: America first. And that means putting the American people and the American taxpayer first. And that's why the president is moving as quickly as he possibly can and working overtime to end these conflicts in both Israel and in Gaza, and also the Russia-Ukraine war. As you all know, the president will be speaking with Putin at 10 o'clock. He plans to call President Zelensky when that call concludes. I spoke to the president about that call at 10 o'clock. I don't want to get ahead of those very important conversations, but of course you will hear directly from the president or me after those calls conclude today. So you can expect that. As for Israel and Gaza, the president continues to not only himself but his national security team engage in talks on both sides of this conflict. The president made it very clear to Hamas that he wanted to see all hostages released. And last week, when we were flying out of town, there was great news on that front with the return of Eden Alexander, who is the last remaining hostage in Gaza. So to answer your question, the president is always thinking about the American people, the American taxpayer first. He wants these conflicts to end, not just to save money, but most importantly, to save lives.
Thank you. And my only other question for you is, so over the weekend, President Trump posted Truth Social a video highlighting what most people call the Clinton body count, which is the strange number of suicides that seem to happen in Clinton circles. I have a headline here from the Washington Post that said, Trump peddles false conspiracy theories tying the Clintons to several deaths. So I just wanted to highlight real quick, this wasn't in Trump's video, but this is from the Arkansas Times, and it's the death of Mark Middleton, who was a former Clinton White House aide, who was found dead on a Clinton Foundation property. And I'll just quote from the Arkansas Times. Middleton apparently shot himself in the chest with a shotgun and also hung himself from a tree with an extension cord. So I have no idea how somebody commits suicide that way, but if the Washington Post is here, maybe you can enlighten us as to how that was actually a suicide. So anyways, that's just a lead into my question about the most famous Clinton-related suicide, which is that of Jeffrey Epstein. There's still a lot of questions around that case. You've released phase 1 of the Epstein files. What was missing from that is any connection to his ties to intelligence agencies, and that's really the whole story, that not just trafficking young girls, but doing it on behalf of intelligence agencies, and even potentially as part of a blackmail ring with potential ties to the Israeli government. So for phase 2, when can we expect it? Will it have information pertaining to those aspects of the Epstein case?
I know the Attorney General has committed to releasing those files. I would defer you to the Department of Justice on her timeline, but when she has made a promise in the past, she has kept it, and I'm certain that she will in this case as well. Rachel.
Thanks so much, Caroline. The president set a 2-week deadline for Ukraine and Russia to negotiate a deal. That time is now up. Does the president intend to set a new deadline on this call with President Putin? And how much longer is he willing to give these talks?
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of the specifics of the conversation the president will be having with President Putin in less than an hour this morning. But he has made clear throughout the entirety of this conflict, since he inherited it from Joe Biden. Don't forget, this is a war that began because of the previous administration's incompetence and weakness, and President Trump Trump is working very hard to fix it. He has made it clear to both sides that he wants to see a peaceful resolution and a ceasefire as soon as possible. But as for specifics on a timeline, I won't get ahead of the president.
And just on the goals for this call in particular, is the goal to get Putin to agree to a ceasefire? Is the goal to lead to some sort of in-person negotiations with Putin and the president?
Well, I think, again, we'll see how the call goes, and the president has made it clear his goal is to see a ceasefire and to see this conflict come to an end. And he's grown weary and frustrated with both sides of the conflict. The president and his team have put an enormous amount of effort in solving this very complicated war that, again, began because of the last administration's weakness.
Does he still want to meet Putin personally?
I think the president would certainly be open to that, but let's see how this call goes today.
What's the status of the secondary sanctions package? The president's been talking about that. You haven't imposed them yet, but is that still on the table?
I think everything's on the table, yes. And again, I won't get ahead of the president in any commitments or decisions, but certainly it's something he's been looking at and discussing. Elaine.
Hi, Ken. I'm going to ask you about the House budget bill. So does the president agree with Republicans behind this bill that Medicaid work requirements should be implemented as soon as 2026?
So the president wants to preserve and protect Medicaid for Americans who this program was intended for, the most vulnerable in our society: pregnant women, low-income families, seniors, those who truly need these benefits. And it should be going to people who physically cannot work. We want to see able-bodied Americans at least working 20 hours per week, whether that's part-time or full-time, whether that's even looking for work or volunteering for 20 hours a week if they are receiving Medicaid. These are common sense provisions. These are common sense changes that were actually introduced by former Democrat President Clinton. They've been supported by every Democrat president since, including the previous president, Joe Biden. But again, these are common sense reforms to ensure that those that this program was intended for receive those benefits.
And then just a quick follow-up. Is the president okay with this bill adding to the deficit?
This bill does not add to the deficit. In fact, according to the Council of Economic Advisors, this bill will save $1.6 trillion. And the president absolutely understands and hears the concerns of fiscal conservatives and of Americans who want to get our fiscal house in order. That's what the intention of this bill is. There's $1.6 trillion worth of savings in this bill. That's the largest savings for any legislation that has ever passed Capitol Hill in our nation's history. The next bill that even comes close was $800 billion. That's less than half of the savings that we see in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And so the goal of this bill is to produce economic growth, to cut taxes, and to get our fiscal house in order. And this is the right step in the right direction towards doing that.
And boy, does it deliver. No tax on tips for our hardworking service industry folks. No tax on overtime for our police officers, firefighters, and everyone putting in those extra hours. These are real Americans who deserve to keep more of their hard-earned money. The Democrats are already crying about it because, surprise, surprise, they love taxing working Americans. But President Trump understands that when you let people keep their own money, the entire economy grows. It's not rocket science, but apparently it's too complicated for the socialist left to understand. And speaking of America first, finally we're securing our border properly. $10,000 bonuses for ICE agents and Border Patrol? About time. These brave men and women were treated like criminals by the Biden administration while actual criminals poured across our border unchecked. 701 miles of primary wall, 900 miles of river barriers. This is what real border security looks like. Not the joke we had for 4 years where they were literally cutting holes in the wall Trump built. The audacity of these people was unbelievable. But back to foreign policy. And this is where Trump really shines. You know what happens when America shows strength? The world listens. That trip to the Middle East? Historic. Absolutely historic. When our allies see that America is back, really back, they start investing in us again instead of hedging their bets with China. The press secretary nailed it when she said it was like the lights turned on in a dark room. For 4 years, America was dark, unresponsive, weak. Now, we're back to being the shining city on a hill that Reagan talked about. Of course, the mainstream media is trying to downplay all of this. They can't stand that Trump is succeeding where Biden failed miserably. They'd rather focus on nonsense than report on actual diplomatic breakthroughs. But we see through their games, don't we, Right View Nation? And let's not forget, while Trump is fixing the world, He's also fixing our economy. Gas prices dropping, inflation declining, nearly 500,000 jobs added already. Compare that to the disaster we had with empty shelves, record inflation, and people choosing between heating and eating. The One Big Beautiful Bill isn't just about taxes. It's about unleashing American potential that was chained down by regulations and government overreach. When businesses can thrive, everyone benefits. When families keep more of their paychecks, communities grow stronger. This is what we fought for in November, patriots. This is why we stood in those long lines, why we made sure our voices were heard despite all the obstacles they put in our way. Because we knew that only Trump could clean up this mess. Every phone call to Putin, every meeting with world leaders, every policy that puts Americans first. This is the America we believe in. An America that leads through strength, not apology tours. An America that secures its borders, not opens them to anyone who shows up. So keep watching, Right View Nation. Keep supporting. Keep sharing these videos because the legacy media sure isn't going to tell you the truth. We're living through a historic moment, the restoration of American greatness after 4 years of managed decline. President Trump is doing exactly what he promised, putting America first, ending endless wars, securing our border, and making deals that benefit U.S., not everyone else. That's the kind of leadership that made America great in the first place. Thanks for watching Right View Nation. Hit that like button if you're proud of President Trump's leadership. Subscribe if you want more truth without the liberal spin. And remember, we don't apologize for loving America. Until next time, keep fighting for freedom, and God bless the United States of America.